So if you watch the mainstream news out there, you've been convinced that we need to worry about a mosquito-borne illness known as Zika. We have been convinced that that mosquito-borne illness, Zika, has been causing the rapid outbreak of microcephaly in Brazil. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that is not the truth. We're going to bring you the facts. We're going to show you that the mosquitoes and the Zika virus is a harmless virus that we have nothing to worry about in terms of that virus right now. We have a ton to worry about when it comes to the chemicals that we are using to even kill those mosquitoes. In fact, the reason we are seeing the rapid outbreak and the rapid increase of microcephaly and brain damage in children being born in Brazil with brain damage, the reason we're seeing that rapid increase is because the chemicals, the very chemicals we're using to kill off the mosquitoes. So we're going to cover the facts, because the facts aren't being brought to you by the mainstream medical media. They're trying to convince you that we need to generate or create a vaccine or drug to control the mosquitoes, or we need to kill them off with chemicals, or we need to create these drugs and vaccines to treat an illness that was known to be harmless by the CDC all the way back in 1947. They're not giving you the facts. You're going to get the facts right here. So what is microcephaly? Microcephaly, break down the name, break down the word itself. Micro meaning small, kind of like micro machines. But micro, that's the cars I used to play with when I was kids, so that's how I know micro is. But micro means small, cephaly, brain. So what is microcephaly? Microcephaly is a form of brain damage in which the baby's brain and nervous system does not develop properly. It in fact had an insult, it had a trauma, it had an injury, whether chemical or viral. World Health Organization notes that the causes of microcephaly are known to be viral infections. That is why they're trying to blame Zika, the virus Zika, but it is not the virus. They also note, the World Health Organization notes, that chemical insults, chemical damage, toxicity is one of the #1 causes of microcephaly, and that's the very cause of microcephaly in Brazil right now. Zika facts, we've known about it since 1947. Take note, if microcephaly, this form of brain damage, neurodevelopmental disorder, was caused by the Zika virus, we would have saw on a yearly basis, every single time the population of mosquito goes up in the areas where Zika is transmitted, all the countries like Colombia, like Brazil, like Argentina, like Africa, every single country in which this virus would be spread during periods of time when the mosquito population went up, we would see every single year following that several months later. Okay, this would be 6 to 9 months later, we would see a rapid increase in microcephaly cases. So we'd see microcephaly cases go up and then go down on a yearly basis. We would see that with the yearly transmission and spread of Zika. But we haven't seen that. We've known about the virus since 1947. The CDC noted before this huge publicity scare, or this promotion of this messed up idea that a virus is causing the sudden outbreak of microcephaly in Brazil, the CDC noted that only 1 in 5 people would have any symptom of being infected with the Zika virus. That's how harmless this virus was. The virus was so weak in comparison to the body's capability of healing and functioning and fighting off an infection. The virus was so weak that only 1 in 5 people would even have a symptom of being infected with it. And when that one person out of 5 had symptoms, it would be like a measly cold or flu symptom. They even in fact say that hospitalization was so rare that the majority of people infected would have no idea they were ever infected with it. Hospitalization is very, very rare. Okay, that's what the CDC said prior to this, again, this medical media promotion, this propaganda campaign to convince the public that we need to fear mosquitoes and fear this virus. And the reason they're doing that, I want you, the public out there, to ask the question, the listener right now, ask the question, why would they not address the actual cause, but promote or publish the idea, promote the propaganda, the idea that a virus is causing it? Because if they suddenly can convince the public that a virus that nobody ever heard about before this point, which has been around since 1947, but nobody's really heard about it because it was no big deal. Well, they can convince the public that it's caused by this virus. Guess what? then they're able to develop a drug or vaccine to treat the public and make more profits. See, when it comes down to it, the CDC is about protecting the private good, the manufacturer, the big business good. They're not about protecting the public's good. And that's a fact. You can read that in British Medical Journal from 2015 that the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, are protecting the private good. Just Google it, read that British Medical Journal, and you'll find that the CDC is blatantly lying to the American public about the safety of vaccines, about the safety of drugs, about how much money they get from industries to promote the use of drugs and chemicals and vaccines. And they're protecting the private good, the manufacturer's good, big business's good. They're protecting profits rather than protecting the public. And that's what we need to do, is we need to get this type of information out to people so that they can understand what they can do on their own to protect them and their families. So let's look at the further facts. So here are the facts behind the sudden increase in microcephaly, that form of brain damage in Brazil alone, mind you. All right, let's look at them. Brazil's microcephaly cases were on average 200 per year prior to 2015. And then suddenly in late 2015, we saw a sudden skyrocketing effect. We saw a significant number of more microcephaly cases being diagnosed in Brazil, meaning more babies were being born with this debilitating condition, this form of brain damage. 200 cases prior to 2015. And then since late 2015 till the current date, we've seen roughly 6,000 cases of microcephaly and other neurodevelopmental conditions. So we've seen over 6,000 babies suddenly increase. Yet 12% of those cases of microcephaly, only 12% were correlated or actually infected with Zika. Confirmed infections was 12% out of the 6,000. So obviously we know for a fact that 12% of the cases may be associated with Zika. What about the other 88% of those cases of microcephaly and neurodevelopmental disorders? Where are they coming from? We know it's not Zika just from those facts, but if you need more facts, let's look at them. The New England Journal of Medicine, so these are major medical journals. New England Journal of Medicine, one of the most prestigious journals, says Zika virus disease in Colombia, their preliminary report, they wanted to ask the question, why only Brazil? Why not every other country? Why not Argentina? Why not Colombia? Why not Africa? Why not every other country that has active Zika virus transmission? Why wouldn't they be seeing a sudden increase in microcephaly just like Brazil? Why wouldn't they? Because the fact is, it's not Zika. We would see microcephaly cases, this form of brain damage, occurring in every single country out there if it was Zika. Every single country with Zika transmission should be seeing a rapid increase in microcephaly cases. So they studied Colombia, and what they find? Out of 12,000 pregnant women infected, confirmed with infections of Zika, guess how many cases actually had microcephaly? Out of those 12,000 roughly, it was 11,944 to be exact. Not a single case of microcephaly was identified in all that roughly 12,000 pregnancies. Not a single case. And in fact, they go on to mention that they know that if we don't see a significant rise in microcephaly cases in Colombia, just like they did in Brazil, it will be proven that Zika is not the cause, and they haven't seen that. So they answered that question right there, that it is not Zika. Further research went into evaluating what could be the cause. And you know what? The cause is exactly what we're using to kill the mosquitoes themselves. The chemicals we are using to kill the mosquito larvae and to interrupt the development of mosquito larvae is exactly what's causing the microcephaly outbreak. And this isn't just isn't my opinion, isn't this natural, healthcare media, idea. You know what? Duke University, in fact, did their own studies and own research, published their own papers and said, we know what's causing this, or we know that this is the probable cause. This is most likely the cause of this condition in the sudden outbreak of microcephaly. Now we need to know a little bit more history about Brazil. Brazil, in 2014, they had another mosquito-transmitted disease that suddenly had an outbreak, okay? So what they do, they decided to make a contract with a chemical company to come in, Sumitomo, to come in and spray their waterways with this chemical larvicide. Larvicide, meaning they were killing off the baby mosquitoes. They were chemically poisoning baby mosquitoes, causing developmental issues in the baby mosquitoes, the larvae. And by doing so, well, then they wouldn't have any more mosquitoes, right? They'd kill all their mosquitoes. The problem was they're spraying this chemical pyroproxafen. That's the chemical pesticide they were spraying in the water system starting in late 2014, roughly 2014, December of 2014, they start spraying their water system, the drinking water, in fact. See, there's some other facts about Brazil's microcephaly cases are concentrated in certain areas where they're spraying the water system more heavily than the other areas. Using this chemical larvicide, which is a juvenile hormone. It's a juvenile hormone that actually is cross-reactive with retinoic acid. What is retinoic acid? Retinoic acid, which is a metabolite or a byproduct of vitamin A. Vitamin A is necessary for the development of our central nervous system, our eyes, all kinds of things in our body, in all mammals. So actually, it can interrupt the normal central nervous system development of mammals. It's called a retinoid. See, retinoids, not just pyroproxafen, which is a retinoid. It cross-reacts with retinoic acid. That's what a retinoid is. So they've identified two other chemical pesticides that we're using in the United States and we're using in other countries to kill the mosquitoes and pests. They've identified that retinoid, or those chemicals known as retinoids, can interrupt the normal development of the central nervous system, the brain, and cause microcephaly. So we've had two other chemicals known to cause microcephaly prior to the use of pyroproxafen. And then we go and spray pyroproxafen, this chemical, into the water system, into the drinking water. We're poisoning the pregnant mothers. We're poisoning the population. We've been poisoning the United States for generations now. So they've identified that. They've also identified that there's medications that are heavily used in the United States, such as Accutane, a medication used to treat acne, severe acne. They've identified that that can cause birth defects in children. If young women are taking that to control their acne, any age woman, if they're taking that to control acne and they suddenly become pregnant and they don't filter that chemical, that drug, out of their system quickly enough, or they don't stop the use of that medication because they didn't know they were pregnant, you know what? That chemical, that drug, is known to cause microcephaly. Because why? Because it's a retinoid, just like pyroproxafen, that is being sprayed in the water system in Brazil. You know, further evidence in this report actually pointed to the fact that they found some evidence for such an effect, meaning microcephaly, including low brain mass and other neurodevelopmental conditions, underdeveloped nervous system, or lack of development of specific areas of the brain in rats. And guess who found that out? It was the actual manufacturer, Sumitomo, of the chemical pyroproxafen. So the manufacturer of pyroproxafen, the chemical, the manufacturer themselves identified in their studies, in their safety studies, that rats, pregnant rats, fed this chemical could give birth to baby rats with low brain weight. If you've been watching this, guess what? What is microcephaly? You would understand that low brain weight is the exact same thing as microcephaly. Micro, small, cephaly, brain. They knew this. They knew that had the potential to cause neurological and brain damage to mammals by the mechanism of actually interfering with the retinoic acid receptors on our cells. And again, retinoic acid is necessary for the binding to a cell. It binds to a cell and it signals for genetic expression of rapid development of the central nervous system. So if you interfere with that process, if you have something that cross-reacts and can bind to that cell receptor and block the actual retinoic acid, the vitamin A in essence, from adhering or contacting and binding with that cell receptor and turning on the gene properly, it now either turns on the gene improperly or it blocks the gene expression altogether. That's the mechanism. So that's huge. If we know something, if science has already proven a mechanism of action by which this chemical can cause microcephaly, and you combine that evidence with the fact that it is perfect timing for when the sudden outbreak, that sudden increase in microcephaly cases occurred in late 2015 till today, that in 2014, late 2014 was when they started spraying that chemical in the water system. It's perfect timing, and we know the mechanism of action. We have to start eliminating this chemical. We have to stop spraying and poisoning our environment. That's the only way we're going to see a decline and reduction in the massive cases of microcephaly in Brazil. But something that's even worse. Here in the United States, you have not been told that we have had the worst rates of microcephaly in the world. Okay, the background rate in the New England Journal of Medicine, they said that the background rate of microcephaly for most countries is 2 per 10,000 live births. So live babies born, out of that, roughly 2. Well, in some states of the United States, we see up to 12 babies per 10,000 born with microcephaly. That's the worst rate out of any industrialized nation. That's the worst rate in the world. So that means on an annual basis here in the United States, we've been seeing roughly 25,000 babies diagnosed with this debilitating neurological condition, born with microcephaly. Yet the United States government and the United States medical professionals, the CDC, the FDA, the ones that are supposed to protect you, the public, and your children, have not mentioned a word of this through the mainstream media. That shows you the corruption. That shows you how the mainstream media is using, the medical system is using the mainstream media to manipulate the minds of the public, to give you only the information that would benefit them. They're utilizing it to control your thoughts, the way you think, the perception of what is dangerous and what is not dangerous. They're driving fear in the hearts and minds of pregnant and young mothers, into fathers. I was just talking to people today about it. They're going on the cruise, and what were they worried about? They wanted some sort of nice bug spray. Well, there's bug sprays that you spray on your skin that are chemicals that can cause, and you can't even dump the bug spray down the toilet. You're supposed to take it to a chemical processing place, somewhere where you can actually, where they can actually recycle their chemical or keep it from getting into our water systems. That's the stuff you're spraying on your skin. That's ridiculous. You know, but they're making us fear a mosquito when we should be actually fearing the chemicals we're using to kill the mosquitoes. And the chemicals we're spraying on lawns. All the uses of this larvicide or these pesticides, we have to eliminate the use of it or eliminate the need for it. Guys, public, people watching this, do you guys get the gravity of this? There are babies being born every single day with this debilitating neurological condition because their mothers are being exposed to chemicals in our environment that we're using on our dogs and our cats for flea and tick control. 2 of the major companies that produce flea and tick collars and flea and tick oils you put on your dogs and your cats, guess what? They contain pyroproxyfen. So what if a mom today doesn't get this video, doesn't get this information out right here because they've been watching the mainstream media out there and they're not telling people the truth. They're not telling people about the cause. They're not telling the people about Duke University studies and evidence showing pyroproxyfen, this chemical larvicide, of how it would cause microcephaly and brain damage to our unborn children. And this mom right now is just sitting there and she's putting this flea and tick advantage or Advantix or whatever you want to call them. She's just placing that. She gets it on her hands. Guess what? They've identified that exposure through skin exposure of those chemicals while a person is pregnant can cause birth and developmental issues in the unborn children. We've known that. But how many people are told that? How many people are brought that information? Well, it sure as heck ain't coming from the mainstream media and the medical professions. They're not telling people. That's why we got to get this truth and information out there. You know, the reality is a lot of people ask me the questions. They say, Dale, if this information is so true and so real, and the fact that we're using these chemicals, why don't we eliminate? Why don't we use natural things like cedarwood oil to spray our lawns? Why don't we figure out how to reduce the amount of chemicals we're using in our food supply, in our water system? Why doesn't the government do something about it? Why doesn't the medical system do something about it? There's too much profit to be made in sick people. There's too much profit. And that may be hard for somebody to swallow out there because they're thinking to themselves, how in God's green earth would a human being be okay with harming and hurting an unborn child for profits? That's tough to swallow, but it's happening. The love of money is the root of all evil. And there's far too many people in this world right now that love money more than they love the health and vibrance of our children, of our population, of our environment. They love money too much. So, some other facts that I dug up that I think people should know about. Here is a Emergent Biosolutions media and an investor paper that they give out to all their investors, all the people making money through investing in this biotech company. That is they work hand in hand, or they're in bed with Monsanto, another major biotech company that is, their chemicals have been shown to be poisoning our population and our communities. Well, Emergent Biosolutions, here's the document, the PDF, you can get it off their website. You'll see that this was the one for, let me get it, Ebola. Emergent Biosolutions awarded $19.7 million contract to help manufacture drugs or vaccines to treat Ebola. That's ironic because that's the very same company. Emergent Biosolutions receives a task order from the U.S. government to develop drugs or vaccines, the amount of money to the sum of $21.9 million to manufacture Zika vaccines. The reason we found out about this is because they were bragging about how their stock prices went up, how they're going to make more money, and their stockholders were going to make more money. I urge everybody out there right now who has stock in this company right now, flush it down the drain. Sell out. Get out of it. Get out of business with a corrupt organization like this Emergent Biosolutions. Emergent Biosolutions is sitting here profiting on the fear-mongering, the propaganda of Zika. They profited from the fear and the propaganda from Ebola. And in less than 2 years, the last two major quote-unquote scares in the public's eyes about an infectious disease, the same company was awarded both times to the tune of $20 million roughly, both times, to create drugs. And where are all the drugs? Where are all the vaccines? Where are all the saving devices and things that we paid for with our $20 million taxes? $20 million of taxes, the public's money, went to Emergent Biosolutions, and we didn't see anything come from that. Ebola just dissipated into thin air. Whatever happened to it? It just went away. You'll see that same thing with Zika. We're pumping and funneling money through this scare tactic, through this propaganda. It's a way in which they can funnel money and they can justify the government handing over taxpayer dollars to the big pharmaceutical industry and the big chemical company. So here's the reality what's going to happen here. Right now, if you've watched this episode, you've watched this whole show right now, you know what? You've got information that you can utilize to help protect our unborn children. You can help with pregnant mothers to feel secure and sound and know that they're doing all they can do to protect their unborn children. You can give them this video, you can send the right information to them, Help them make an informed and educated decision on eliminating the use of chemicals like the flea and tick collars and the chemicals they're putting on their dogs and their cats. Or they can say no to the chemical companies or the companies that come out and spray their lawns, so they're not spraying chemicals all over their lawn and they're breathing that in if they have an open window. They can decide to eat organic fruits and vegetables and stop eating conventional meats that actually are conventional meats in the United States. They put and they spray the meat with pesticides. Why? Because they can't help but have flies land on the meat during the processing of a meat, the conventional meat in America. So they spray chemicals on that meat to kill any larvae that would be growing on that meat, so that when a person receives fresh, cuts of meat, they gotta have that chemical on there, because surely there's been flies that landed on it and their larvae, their maggots, are gonna grow. Well, people would be grossed out about that and they wouldn't buy the meat again. So they spray it with these chemicals, and then mothers are ingesting those chemicals and then their babies are poisoned by it. That's the way it's happening. We need to stop allowing profits to come before the people or our children. And what I'm going to say is there's two things that are going to happen. Either you're going to take this information, you're going to do nothing with it, you're going to continue buying your same products, you're going to continue buying the same foods. And we're going to continue to see more and more babies. We're going to see more babies, not just 25,000 on average per year in the United States. We're going to see more babies in the United States develop microcephaly and other forms of brain damage, because we're going to increase the use of chemicals, because we've driven this idea of fear of mosquitoes into the hearts and minds of our population, and people haven't been given the truth, and therefore we're going to see more babies developing this or born with microcephaly and brain damage. Or number two, we're going to do what's right. We're going to do what's necessary to protect our unborn children and our population and ourselves. We can go organic, we can stop spraying chemicals into our environment, or, you know what? We can go about business as usual. We can allow the chemical manufacturing companies to keep polluting our environment and our food, our waterways. We can keep destroying our environment. We can keep fearing Zika and mosquitoes. And then we'll just see more children develop microcephaly. We'll see more of the problem that they're saying they're going to solve with more chemicals. We'll just see more children harmed. It's up to us. I know which way I'm going. You make the decision for yourself.